Welcome everyone to Jesse's Stories. I am happy to announce before we go into the interview process with Cecilia Peck that Escaping Twin Flames on Netflix is Emmy eligible. We're currently hoping to get nominated for Best Series, Directing, and Editing, and hopefully win all the above. So if you are part of the television community of people, please vote for us. And if you are a viewer and know someone who is, please spread the word. The word's really important. And I hope you guys enjoy the interview with Cecilia as much as I did. It was fun talking with her. We didn't really get the chance on set to talk like we did during this interview. We did talk after the whole process, just normal talk. And I do hope we do stay in contact. She is a very kind and caring person. And I was very thankful to be on the docuseries and look forward to future projects with Cecilia. Thanks so much for everyone watching and enjoy the interview. See you at the interview, guys. Bye. Thank you so much for being here, Cecilia. And welcome everyone to Jesse's Stories, where everyone gets to tell their story. And today, Cecilia is going to be telling her side of the story of making Escaping Twin Flames on Netflix. If you could introduce yourself.
Okay, my name's Cecilia Peck, and I am my screen credits are EP, which is executive producer and director of the series. My actual roles are the co-showrunner of the series with Inbal and the director.
What is the primary role of a showrunner?
Well, traditionally in television, the showrunner is the creator of the series, the person who either initiates the concept and brings it to the network or is hired by the network to write and develop a series and manage it from start to finish. So the showrunner role has, traditionally existed in scripted television, but it's now being applied to documentary, which traditionally is unscripted. It's been a form of content where you follow a story without a script or an agenda. So with the rise of popularity of documentary series, which now are produced more like a scripted series in terms of a production schedule, a budget, a limited number of shoot days, a limited number of editing weeks, so that these require more of a showrunner to keep everything on time and on budget. So the showrunner role in the series, as Inbal and I interpret it anyway, I'm the showrunner in charge of production, and Inbal is the showrunner in charge of post-production. But what we do together is develop the concept, figure out the essence of the story, write a very detailed outline. In this case, I think the outline which was submitted to Netflix was somewhere between 30 and 40 pages. So it's broken down into episodes. It has to be approved by the network. And there was plenty of back and forth, with our outline, both with our production company, ITV, and with Netflix. So once that's all approved, then we go into production. So in production, my showrunner role was basically, along with Inbal, hiring crews, being on set, and then in post-production, also working side by side with Inbal on the animation, on the graphics, on working with the editors and the story team, on crafting the episodes and the narrative through lines, all the way to the final cut. So some of that overlaps with directing, but basically, to recap, a showrunner is more or less the creator of the show who manages production from start to finish.
I like that. And then as a director, what was your primary role?
So that's different on every project. And I very much believe in teamwork and in that all of us make these shows together. But as director, one of my jobs is defining the look and the style of the series. So in this case, selecting the director of photography, and that has to be done with approval by Netflix and by ITV. So that was a matter of going through everybody's lists and figuring out who would be the best person to film this series. And we did speak to and interview incredibly talented DPs. We were very fortunate to get Matt Chavez, who was high up on everybody's list. So part of my work was in, weeks of talking with Matt about what camera we were going to use, what lenses, how the interviews would be shot, where the contributors would be in the frame. As you remember, Jesse, remember when we moved to another part of the room where we filmed your interview and did those shots of you at your laptop with the camera moving slowly on a track beside you?
Yeah, I do.
So that was something that was thought out and designed months in advance with the idea, the hope that that slow move would help the audience feel like they were getting more inside the mind or the thoughts or the experience of our contributors. So all of that, describing how the series would look, was part of my work as a director. And then probably my main job was in developing relationships with all of you who participated, and then slowly reaching out and getting connected to people who might want to be part of the series. And then over the months prior to shooting, talking and determining whether you and the others would trust me as a director. And I think everybody approached it with a kind of mix of determination that it was important to tell this story and to expose what was really going on in that organization, mixed with an intense fear of being exploited again, or of not being fully seen or understood, or of how these interviews would ultimately look in the editing process. So, and then on set, the director, is responsible for conducting the interviews and communicating with the participants or contributors, and making sure that everybody else on the set has what they need to do their job. And then on in post-production to, as I had mentioned, working with the editors to craft the story in the editing room.
Which was great too. And well, one thing that stands out for me, at least, is the emails when I was first becoming a possibility for coming on board for the series, is that you guys kept on answering honestly and quickly too, through email, through text, or even through Zoom. Or did we use something different? Was it?
I think we did Zooms.
Okay.
We had at least a few Zooms with you. I remember you and I had a pretty long pre-interview on Zoom. I think we had a producer named Danny Sloan developing with us at that time, or it was possibly Morgan, but I remember we had a three-way Zoom when you did tell us your story in detail, which eventually led to the shape of your interview and the questions that were asked on set. Because I think we filmed with you in January of 23. No, yeah, is that right? January 23.
23.
But we met you sometime in mid 22.
Yeah.
Does that sound
I don't
right?
know. Yeah, it would have been when I first started at my other job. Trying to think. I think it was only like 6 months into it. So it would have been like before Christmas, maybe. I don't know. I'm not very good at timeline.
We met some of the moms in early 21. So we were developing and researching for 2 years, I think, before we filmed with you.
Yeah, you guys said that. Well, you said that, Cecilia, and when Sloan was there, because Morgan didn't come in until closer to shoot dates of coming up with everything. And
her name's Danny Sloan.
Danny Sloan.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Danny Sloan.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, at least of what I remember, especially with the long one that you brought up. Because I remember meeting her first and mainly talking to you and Inbal, or sometimes just you, or yeah, it was always a mix of people. But you guys pre-prepped me when there was someone else coming in.
From that first long Zoom we had, we understood what your part of the organization and kind of your timeline. We learned a lot from you about things that emerged during the interview that were incredibly important and revealing.
How did you decide the stories that would be filmed for the series?
I think all of you really led us to the story that we told. I think we learned so much from talking to everyone and, the pre-interviews with everyone over those months, combined with reading everything we could about Twin Flames universe and doing our research, and also consulting with experts in the field, with sociologists, with Dr. Lalich, with Dr. Adair, our gender expert. You all were the essence of how we arrived at our understanding of Twin Flames universe, which I think, based on those 2 years of research and conversations and looking at archival materials, looking at the classes, looking at texts, looking at emails, the picture that emerged was of an organization that systematically exploits and abuses people for financial gain. That seemed to us that was what was going on here. So I think our meetings with all of you led to that. And I think that, that is what emerges through your interviews and through the, insights from the classes and from all of the other materials that are present in the series.
Yeah, which you guys did an incredible job in telling the story, period, from just the visuals to, well, the music, to getting everyone's emotion on camera, but the real true emotion, not fake emotion that you see in some docuseries. And yeah, I think you guys did a really good job. And for being honest and not, well, I'll say the same thing I said to Imbal is I appreciate you kept it human and not, I guess, Hollywood. You kept it human and raw and real.
Thanks, Jesse. It was very important to us to try to create a safe space, and have support systems in place that a lot of thought went into selecting every single person on the set as somebody who was empathetic and who did understand that you were trauma survivors. And I think our main priority is being trauma-informed filmmakers.
Which you guys, well, you definitely are. And especially with being able to put the support in place, because that was very much appreciated. Because at the time, I didn't realize the support that was put in place, but that you put in place. If you want to talk about the supports that you put in place, or wait.
I think we should, and there was some degree of mental health support offered by our production company, ITV, and which was available during shooting and I think before and after. Not everyone elected to use it, but there were definitely moments when participants or contributors, I won't mention names, did need to reach out for mental health support during an interview day. So that was available, and when that happens, it does affect the day because it means that you're not sticking to the schedule you planned out. So that always requires a lot of last minute adjusting and flexibility. But that's one thing that our whole team needed to be mindful of on this series. But besides that support, everybody on the project, starting with, our supervising producer, Morgan Pofferl, who is very skilled at so many things, including archival research and managing all of the materials that all of you submitted to us. And we did ask you for photographs and emails and letters. But beyond that, she has incredible empathy as a human being and this instinctive sense of when it's time for a hug or a joke or, a cup of tea or a conversation. So Morgan was there on the set in large part to make sure that you all were okay. And there's nobody better at it. And Nadine also, our associate producer, has an incredible gift of keeping things positive, even, from on the way to the set. When I have my face buried in, the interview questions and thinking over the through line of an interview, Nadine was so wonderful at just keeping everyone's spirits up and talking, whether it was about the day or the night before or karaoke. I mean, that's Morgan's domain. I shouldn't take karaoke away from her, but as you know, too, Nadine has an incredible gift of making sure that everybody who's on the set feels good, because the material is so intense and it's so dark, and it's so important for both all of you, the contributors, and the entire crew and team to be feeling good so they can do their best work and not, being overcome by this shadow of trauma. So that's Nadine and Morgan. Inbal also, who was able to come to set when you were there, which is absolutely wonderful when she can come. But as our showrunner in charge of post, she's often in the editing room working with the story team, even while we're filming and out in the field, as they say. But when we shot in LA, she was able to come, and she also has an incredible gift for making things clear, for explaining interview questions and what's next. And it does take a team to make sure that everything that you need as our on-camera contributors is okay, for you, and that you're not worrying about what you're going to be asked or why there are so many people in the room. So, it takes all of us. Everyone was chosen because of their ability to listen and empathize and be supportive when needed. It was a very important priority to make sure that the sets were safe and supportive.
Which is very much appreciated. And I know you had you fully were able to get Imbal on set for me and do a lot for me, actually, from making sure Nadine and Morgan were there, and the prep for the premiere, finances to help everyone make it out there. If you want to explain that side of things too. You don't have to if you don't want to. We can also move on.
I mean, I definitely want to talk about bringing you all together to watch the series together. But maybe, I don't know, we'll talk about that after we talk about the shoot more.
Okay, we can definitely do that. So the next question, at least I have written down before getting to the day, is what was the research process like in learning about Twin Flames universe? Did you only use the interviews, or did you dig deeper into other ways?
Only using interviews, meaning the on-camera interviews or the pre-interviews? I mean, I guess I can talk about both because, the pre-interviews and those months leading up to production were what led us to, understanding of the organization and the story. We had our incredible research team of our Jesse Parker Hart, and Avery combing through the classes. So Jesse and Avery were very focused on their research of identifying the moments from the classes that were able to help explain how the organization worked, and basically how the exercises or techniques, the mirror exercise and map, were used to control people and separate them from their families and change your way of thinking. So they were doing all that work. That was part of our research, understanding how cults are structured, the MLM nature of these groups, of many of these groups, I believe, including this one, talking to Dr. Adair and Dr. Lalich. So the research process was very intensive in trying to make sure we fully grasped how this organization was operating.
Oh, wow. And then let's see, as a director, what goes into, I guess, prepping for your day, typical day? I wrote that badly.
I basically, write the interview questions. I also share them with the editing and story team so that everybody has input, and we make sure that we don't miss anything. So it's working on those questions, giving it a shape in my mind so that it flows naturally and the questions don't come at you randomly. And then, for me in particular, making sure that I have them like inside me so that I'm not looking down and reading from a paper after every answer, because sometimes it's emotional, it's difficult, and I don't want to break eye contact with you on the set and look down at my paper right when you've revealed something personal. So that's a lot of my prep, is making sure that it flows as a conversation that feels comfortable, that makes sense, and that isn't broken up by distractions. As you saw, I always have my paper with my questions, and that's something I get teased about by my team, because I'm always, when we're on location, like, who has a printer? How can I print these? And they're like, don't worry, we'll get them printed. And, I say, no, but I need them in a certain font so that I don't have to wear glasses, because I can't see Jesse through my glasses, but I don't want to have to put them on to look down at the paper. So, I mean, that's ridiculous, but those are some of the things that I think about so that it's not distracting and it's not awkward, so that it can just have a rhythm that feels comfortable. So I guess, yeah, the interview questions are a big part of my prep, as well as, having worked out basically having looked at photographs of wherever we're shooting, which as often as possible was in people's homes. But for people when we couldn't travel to them and who came to us like you, we would need to find a location, and Nadine was incredible at that, at finding places that just felt right. But so the prep would be in seeing photographs. We usually couldn't get to that location, figuring out in advance where the camera's going to go, which way it's going to point. So having that, and then also doing that prep so that when you get to the set, you already have an idea, so you don't stand around for an hour just trying to figure out where to put the camera. I mean, there's still a lot of adjustments, as you saw. But other prep for the shoot is obviously, getting the call sheet ready. I'm not sure you ever saw one of our call sheets, but that's basically a spreadsheet with everybody on it who's going to be working on the set that day. And those were managed by Dana in New York. And by the way, you should interview Dana Salvatore, our production manager, I think is their title, who was just incredible at remotely managing all of our shoots. Have you interviewed them?
I asked them, but it was turned down
Oh, it
because
was?
anxiety. They don't want to be in front of the camera. We did talk. I did ask them, and I asked another editor too, who also turned it down. So not everyone who wants to be on here has to go through the interview process, because not everyone wants to be in front of a camera.
Yeah. Okay. I would be
But I
so
did ask.
interview. Yeah, I'm sure. Okay, good job asking. Also, there was a lot of prep work that went into the video clips that we used in the interviews, because Inbal and I determined or realized that it could be very informative to have people watch videos of the classes and explain to us what they believed they were seeing at the time, or what they were learning at the time, and how they saw that now with the benefit of hindsight after having left the group. So, Jesse and Avery helped a lot with finding the right the right videos or clips that would be useful during the interviews. And Inbal was also amazing at coordinating those and making sure that I had the right ones on the set, whether she was there or not. So that was part of the prep. What else goes into prep as a director? Oh, and then, I mean, I hope I spoke to you the night before, because that is important. And I know I tried to whenever possible, just making sure that all of you knew what to expect and were feeling okay.
And you did great with that. I personally need like foreknowing what's going to happen, at least question wise, before going into something, just because that goes into my daily work in general. And I need it for my neurodivergent ways too. That, and I appreciate you for prepping me and always prepping me too. Like you were a comfort sitting in front of me, at least with the style that you sat, because I thought the way you're sitting was very boss mode, which is a compliment. It's not a not compliment. It's a good thing. I don't know why there's a negative, I guess, to society of a woman being like a boss and power, and you're a boss in a good way. I like the way Nadine describes you better, because she said mother figure, and you definitely were, because you even did the checking in with my mom on set, which was helpful because she was paranoid, and you made sure that we had a moment to do that on set, which was nice.
Well, I definitely want to talk about your mom in the course of this conversation.
Okay.
You revealed about her, but I'm not sure if that's somewhere we're getting to or if it's a tangent, but wait,
We totally can.
Well, I mean, I want to talk about interviewing you, and what you brought to our project. But is that somewhere we're getting, or should we do it? Or wait, we're talking about prepping for the day's shoot. I think
And she was a part of it. She was part of text message, and Morgan taking a picture of me that ended up on my IG and part of the thumbnail in our interview of me doing. She took that picture for my mom.
I mean, your story with your mom is so emotional to me that I could definitely get choked up even thinking about it. But let's talk about it for a moment, because I know your mom was reluctant. I know it's hard for any mom to talk about this, having a child who was in a high control group, and what you said was that your mom at the right time gave you the perfect answer to your question. She didn't tell you you were in a cult. I mean, maybe we should go back a little about what you also enabled us to understand about gender in Twin Flames universe, because you were so clear that you were asked to become a divine masculine, right, Jesse? I mean,
Yeah, that I was a male in a female's body, pretty much. But I was the male in the relationship, and my counterpart who had a child was the female of the relationship.
Well, I think you were incredibly helpful in making it clear that you weren't somebody who came to Jeff and Shalia saying, I think I'm male, or I think my identity is masculine. They told you you were masculine. And we have many hours of video of them telling people that they needed to transition. Of course, our profound hope is that the people who have transitioned within Twin Flames universe, especially the ones who have undergone surgery, are happy in their bodies and in their gender identities. But from what we saw and heard from you and Angie and saw in many hours of recorded interviews, this didn't come from the majority. The desire to transition didn't come from people. They were told to transition. So as we know from Dr. Adair, that's the opposite of what the trans community supports, is people finding their true gender identity, not being told what gender they need to be. So I think you explaining that so clearly, that you never saw yourself as a man, you never had body dysmorphia, that you were put into these what were called healing sessions, but were actually just repeated pressure on you and others to change genders, and then eventually ultimately seeking your mom's help or advice, and your mom asking you, is it you or them, was just very moving, and not saying to you, you're in a cult, Jesse, just letting you know that she loved you, she trusted you, but she wanted you to make sure you understood whether it was you or them. So that's something that nobody else, said on camera, and made it so clear for any parent who's in that position that what they need to do is just be supportive of their child, ask them rational questions, don't say you're in a cult, and do exactly what your mom did. So it's a really important moment in the series. And, your experience, you went through so much. That was one element of it. But when you're making a series and you need the participants to expose the truth in a way that's real and that's emotional and that people can connect with, because then the audience can take it in and wake up and understand and maybe let go of some of their preconceptions about cult members and understand how indoctrination works and the repeated exposure to these exercises and to MAP and to these group sessions and to the whole premise that Jeff and Shalia and how someone like your mom could give you the clarity to make sure you didn't allow your gender to be reassigned.
Yeah, that was a big moment, at least in my life, in getting out of the cult, since she was my rational / clarity of thought of what to do and how to get out, since I had already wanted to get out. But yeah, she means a lot. And I like all the messages I actually got after the series. I had a lot of people reaching out saying your mom rocks, and that what is another message? That I hope she's doing okay. And my mom's not someone who likes to be on camera or have pictures of herself or anything like that, so her identity and everything else will always stay non-existent. But she's a very smart lady and very loving. But we did have our trial and error when I was first in there of me cutting off contact with her, and she did call it a cult in the beginning. I think she learned from the first round not to do that.
Okay, but was she proud of you for participating in the series, and did she like how you spoke about her?
Yes, I was scared with how she was going to feel about that, since I didn't tell her that I spoke about her. So I just nervously awaited. And we watched it after the premiere. I did watch it with her, but I couldn't get through all 3 episodes, but I got through 2 of them with her, and she said it's fine, I'll just finish it on my own. But we did watch them together. And it wasn't easy for her to get through because she doesn't like knowing that her daughter, I'm going to try to word it the way she words it, that her daughter was in a high control group and was taken advantage of and was coerced. And yeah, she doesn't like that. And she has a hard time hearing about any of the stuff that has happened, since I've been a lot more open, and there's a lot more publicly now open too. That is harder for her, but she was happy and loved the film too, the series. She thought it was really well done. But yeah.
Well, please send her my love.
I will. I absolutely will. Let's see. I am not good at switching into more questions. Well, there's the walk me through a typical day as director on set.
I feel like we've touched on some of that, but
or we can.
Well, I mean, basically, I'll try to do it in a nutshell then.
Okay.
I arrive early with the DP, the director of photography. We walk through, as we mentioned, where we hope to set up the cameras, just make sure that everything's in the right place, work on the lighting. I think you probably saw me looking through the monitor over and over and tweaking something, and just checking that the frame is beautiful. I think when you're making a show for Netflix, there's a certain expectation that the shots are going to be artfully composed, that the lighting will help create the right feeling for the series. So there's a lot of setup and tweaking that I work with the DP on the morning of a shoot. And then it's, making sure that when you arrive, that things are comfortable and explain to you what's about to happen, and then going through the interview, trying to always be mindful of when a break might be needed. Ideally, I would have a whole day with you to really go in depth about everything you wanted to talk about, including, you were very informative with us on how Twin Flames universe used legal threats to silence people. But I guess what I'm getting at is that when you're making a show for a streamer, you have to stick to the schedule, and you don't always get to spend the kind of time you would want to with a contributor to the series. So part of my job is making sure we do land where we need to within the allotted time frame.
And actually, with the cease and desist, I did go a little more in depth, at least with Sarah Berman, which I'm very thankful that you had us meet, because she has been a good source of just learning too, since I'm getting a little bit into journalism myself and writing. So it's helped a lot. And thank you very, very much for that. Very much appreciated. But yeah, in that interview, if you watch it, you'll see I talk a lot more in depth, not too fully, because I'm saving a lot of it for my memoir, but I do at least reach the surface level of it.
Great. I haven't seen that one yet, but I really want to.
And we talk about you too, Cecilia, in that too, and involved. So there's more in depth there that I think is important for you to see when you're able to, because I know you have a lot going on also as life happens.
I really love what you're doing and the way you're going into the process of how a series is made and researched and developed and how a story is told. Because usually when we're interviewed, or I am, or me and Inbal, it's always about the cult and, how they got people to do things. And it's so much more fun and interesting for me to talk about how we made the series and what went into it. So great job, Jesse. I think it's a really unusual and interesting angle.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. That means a lot.
And wait, did I finish a typical day?
I don't know.
There's what happens at the end of the day. It depends also whether you're traveling and on location, or whether you're at home. But part of the day definitely involves preparation for the next day, and possibly talking to the contributor that was interviewed that day, or the one who's coming on camera the next day. So the day definitely doesn't end when the camera wraps. It's definitely a very, the shooting days are very, very full.
Yes, they definitely are. And learning more of everything that went into it is honestly really, really great. But my next question is, how did you design and animate parts of our stories?
Okay, interesting. I mean, we worked with an incredibly talented animation firm called Yuck Fu Animation. They're based in Melbourne and Auckland. So just getting the timing right to even be able to talk to them was a challenge. But I had seen a short film they animated and just thought they brought an incredible level of artistry and skill to their animation. So when you are making a doc series, there is going to be a lot that there was no footage. There were no cameras there for instance, when the twin flames first met in person, or, for the map exercises. Actually, we did have some of them on camera, but all of the parts of the story where nobody was there, and sometimes that can be described through an interview, but sometimes you want to see more. You need to be able to visualize it. And in our past two series that I've made with Inbal, Seduced Inside the Nexium Cult, and to us, the animation has kind of allowed for more an imaginary realm of a way to depict things or think of things. Also with the what do you call it? The divine pairings.
Yeah.
So, Jeff and Shalia created this ritual. So how do you even depict that? How do you even explain how people would be in a state where they could accept being told who their partner is, by somebody who is claiming to have some direct channel to God? And so I think through the animation, we were able to create this sense of the ritual that they produced. It was kind of a hypnotic ritual. They used the premise of, the spiritual moment. I think all those things are part of a calculated coercion of, preparing people, grooming people to accept that Jeff and Shalia have this divine power to tell you who you're supposed to be with. And I just don't think anyone has that power. Nobody's closer to God than anyone else is. Maybe you can have instincts about, feeling a spiritual connection to the universe, but everybody sees God in a different way. Everyone has a different set of beliefs and rituals. No one can claim to be God and tell you who you're supposed to be with. So I'm going on a tangent, but
Hey, it's fine. It's good to. I do it all the time when I'm doing interviews. So, hey, it's nice to see you doing it.
that was by way of talking about how the animation for that moment, along with, the music, created this sense of a spiritual ritual that I think it helped them put them in a place where they could accept or even consider giving over that much control to these people. I mean, originally, Jesse, we had this concept that the people who were animated we might use a style of tarot to depict them, because, and even in your case, tarot was a big part of Twin Flames universe for a while. Shalia did readings. I think you were originally told about it by a tarot reader. Is that right?
Yeah, the tarot reader was on YouTube. She's the one who originally brought me to the concept, told me to buy the book, and also eventually told me to go into the forum. But it was only after reading the book and after we had our first couple of mirror exercise sessions. So she played the role of a ascension coach without being an ascension coach, because she didn't have like the badge or the title. She just had these motives because the name came in like a year later of me being in there, like the actual not a year later. I guess Ascension Coach did exist. She just wasn't an official Ascension Coach.
We were looking at using tarot art. I think that was a little too esoteric for Netflix ultimately. So the people who are depicted, like Keely and Marley and Elle, Angie, who else is depicted? It's more, it's representational. It didn't end up being based on the tarot, but we went through a lot of different ideas to arrive at the style of animations. But I think they do help take you inside those moments. Even when later in the story, when Keely and Colby go to try to get Marley out of the cult, there's a simple animation of it's drawn from behind Keely and Colby as they knock at Marley's door, and she opens it and you just see her eyes grow so big. So just those little moments, I think, helped you feel the kind of intensity, the fear, the different, emotions and, experiences of those parts of the story that we didn't have footage for.
Yes, they were great animation. I personally learned better. That's why my intro is animated. I do better with animated things. I understand animation a lot better. Like Has Been Hotel. I really love that animated show. And the person who plays your role, I think her name is like Vizian something. She started on YouTube though. Yeah, and we're getting close on time. I know we have like 4 minutes.
We have more to do. So I would love to talk more about animation. Animation is so interesting because it doesn't say this is how it was. It says this is how it felt, or this is how it might have been, or this is a way that you might be able to think about it. But anyway, let's move on if we're getting close.
Well, I don't know if you want to answer the question that everyone's gotten so far, because then it falls off the track of going behind the scenes. It just goes, do you believe Jeff and Shlia are a danger to society?
Look, I mean, based on the hundreds of hours of footage that we watched and based on our interviews, I feel that they were definitely presenting the organization as something positive and something helpful. But my sense is that it's operating as a type of, MLM that's pretending to be a relationship coaching school, but really all of those techniques like the mirror exercise and MAP are actually designed to break down people's self-confidence, to separate them from their families and convince them that they need to purchase expensive courses and coaching sessions, to improve themselves and their lives. But I don't think there's any evidence to show that people's lives get better. I really think on the contrary, it has ruined a lot of people's lives. So I do think it's institutional abuse of people. I do think it's a coercive and dangerous organization.
I fully agree with that, just from my personal experience of being in it, that it's verbally abusive. It never got physically abusive, but definitely verbally abusive. Like, I didn't talk about this on the series, but Elle and I, we were originally supposed to in New York go to our rave together that we had been planning for months and months to go and dance, because we both love rave. As she does the music, I also love raves and I love DJs. And we were really excited about it, but Jeff told her that she'd be leaking her energy if she went. So we ended up not going. This is a moment I haven't shared really with anyone, but I feel like right now would be a good one since you brought up Elle a couple times anyways. But yeah, we were originally supposed to, our first kind of like friend, since we were no longer coach client, it was just friend because I had moved on to other coaches and I was a coach and she was a coach. But yeah, besides that, that was an example of a little more of emotional coercion within there.
Part of it, I believe, was also separating people within the group. So even though it felt like a community, once anybody would start to question things, they would immediately be ostracized or pushed out, and you'd be forbidden from contacting anyone. So I think unless everyone was extremely compliant, they were isolated from each other. And that's another form of, of manipulation.
Yes, very much so. Because to this day, I was looking forward to that in New York, because I had never gone raving in New York before. But yeah, just an example of how, I guess, how coercive just having that small, since leaking your energy was a big deal in it. And we just hit the time. Should we end it since it's 2:30 your time?
Talk about favorite memories a little bit more.
Okay. If you watch Let the Fresh Air In, that interview, Cecilia, her and I both talk about how America is pretty much a cult in itself, since we have had a president that was a cult leader, who's currently running again.
Well, always have a bigger picture in mind of the danger of, manipulation and people who try to control others. So I think it applies to politics, workplaces, relationships, cults. The techniques are so similar for kind of captivating people and then indoctrinating them and controlling their lives.
Absolutely. And then to go to the one you just said, do you have any favorite memories favorite memories on set?
Well, I, loved interviewing you. I think we've touched on a lot of it and what you were willing to talk about and bring forth with, your honesty and your, being so open, being so willing to talk about difficult things and bringing your mom. So your interview was amazing. There were so many people who were so willing to do that, and also people who were willing to show us that humor was an essential tool in coping with things, like Elle, of course, and and Angie and Drea and Shanice. I mean, so many people helped us make a series that wasn't just so incredibly dark that it was unbearable, and also to just make it okay, to make you able to understand that you have to have humor in times of darkness. So you all were great at that. I mean, what people were willing to share. I think Angie's whole story of being, having her gender manipulated not once but twice. I think the courage to tell a story like that was so important. Elle, obviously, of the lengths, she went to, how her mind was manipulated into thinking she had to pursue that, some person who she should have been told and would have been by any real therapist or friend, leave that relationship alone, let it go. It didn't work out. But over and over, Twin Flames universe pushed people back into these destructive relationships that didn't have any hope of survival, or paired people with people they didn't want to be with. And people have ended up in relationships with a lot of abuse and unhappiness. But sorry, I was talking about, people who came forward who, their interviews are so unforgettable to me because of what they were willing to reveal. Obviously, Keeley's entire storyline of being somebody who was groomed by Jeff and Shalia into, being in a position of power within the group, and her coming to terms with what she actually did, which at the time she thought was helpful, but being willing to, acknowledge it and seek help, seek advice from Yanya, and go and make amends to Angie. I think that's a storyline you don't see very often in a documentary with all of its honesty and vulnerability. So, that's obviously a favorite, but so many moments, you all just brought so much honesty and vulnerability and enabled us to make this series, along with the incredibly passionate and dedicated team behind the camera, and first and foremost, Inbal, who, has the entire series in her mind at every moment and knows how every piece of footage and every moment in an interview fits into creating an incredibly powerful narrative structure to a series. So lucky to be able to work with her. But my other, favorite experience was being able to bring all of you together, because I think we felt like people had been so separated. It was so hard to leave, and relationships were so frayed. And then we also didn't want people to have to take in this incredibly emotional story of their lives alone in their homes. So we were able to raise the funds to help people come to Los Angeles and get a screening room and have a dinner and have time for all of you together. And then, having you all here together so that we could, share that whole experience was just really, emotional and memorable. And I know how much it meant to us on the production side, and I hope it did the same for you. And I do feel like it has translated into people, having a community of people who are willing to work together to continue to expose this group and, and how cults work, and hopefully, like you said, bring an end to this organization and others like it.
Yes, absolutely. I feel like the meeting in person, since the last time at least I had seen all of them in person was in New York. So it was really nice to, even though it was really nerve-wracking, really nice to see them in person, and to see you again in person, and to see Inbal in person, and Avery and Jesse and Mimi, who else? Everyone. Too many names. A lot of people.
I'm so happy you could come, Jesse.
Thank you. I appreciate that, Cecilia. I'm very happy that I was able to make it, and I'm happy that I was able to post about it too, since I noticed everyone, cast, well, yeah, we're still counted as cast and crew, posted on IG, because you can type in now Escaping Twin Flames, and most of the posts on there are actually crew members. And then, of course, I guess we're called participants /
I know.
contributors.
Well, we are trying to stay away from cast because that sounds like, you're actors in someone else's project. So I was saying participants, but Morgan started using contributors, which I love. So I hope those are words that feel appropriate to all of you.
Yes, absolutely. I'm honestly good with, yeah, I guess cast can be weird, but I'm so used to just film in general. You always have cast and crew. So I
Yeah.
guess for me, and in one of my jobs, well, in my job, we call our kids participants. So it's kind of interesting to hear participant and then switch to contributor, though I do like contributor better than participant just because it sounds more like you are doing a part, which you are. And yeah, I don't know if I explained that well, but that's
You did, but I think language is important and it's essential to use the right words that aren't triggering or that don't make you feel like you might be exploited or taken for granted or that you might be back in a situation like in the cult.
yes, which is very much appreciated. Very thoughtful, I guess, set, like the best set I've been on. Because in the past I have, which I think Jesse asked me it off camera, but I'll just say it on camera from when I was on the set of Whiplash. At least it was a whole different feel because you weren't human. You were just there and you were allowed to ask questions, but you were just there. You weren't really treated fully like human. This was my senior year in high school. My best friend and I in LA were on a set for Whiplash, and they made fun of us for going off the bus with all of our luggage onto the set because we hadn't made it to our hotel yet. We were going to go from the set to the hotel room from there, and we were brutally made fun of when we came in with our luggage.
Mhm.
So I don't have a positive first set experience on, I guess, a bigger set. I don't know. It didn't become a bigger set until later. It was technically a low budget.
Trauma can be triggered by additional stressors. So there's less of an ability to cope with additional stress when you've survived trauma. And I think, being interviewed on camera is a stressor, obviously, with lights pointing at you and strangers in the room. So we just try to minimize or provide support in those situations where additional stress could trigger trauma that you've already experienced.
I do consider myself a trauma survivor because of everything I went through when I was there, considering I did eventually get homeless too during that time period. And you were told of separation consciousness and that you were choosing to be homeless, which I've seen actually other influencers say the same thing that are smaller, which is very scary to know that that's out there in general, which isn't a true train of thought and isn't true. You don't choose to be homeless. It happens to you. You don't create the reality in front of you, which is taught in Twin Flame Universe and Twin Flame Ascension School. You don't make your reality. Your reality happens. You don't have a choice of what happens in that reality.
Mm-hmm. To say nothing of the money that you've spent on classes and coaching may have been, a contributor to your financial difficulties.
Oh, it absolutely was. It was a huge contributor to my financial difficulties that happened while I was in the cult. Because
Right.
most of my finances, besides a little teensy bit, if I was lucky, went towards food. Other than that, it was all going towards them.
Right. And then you're told that you're choosing poverty consciousness. That's just manipulation.
Yeah, and really, since you can't say the F word on um, YouTube, it's really, really messed up. I'll say messed up.
Very, very coercive and insidious and dangerous manipulation. It was such a pleasure to work with you and to see you blossoming as an interviewer and having this channel. I'm super proud of you. I'm incredibly grateful that we all got to make this series together. I hope it makes an impact, and I hope that you and I stay in touch and do more projects together.
I hope so too, honestly. I loved, well, being on set with you and my brain. Oh gosh. I loved every moment that we did. And I hope we do future projects too and continue staying in touch, even if it's at random times. But continue staying in touch. Embrace your truth, tell your story, and please leave comments below and like and subscribe. Comments help the algorithm, so please comment if you have a question, even for Cecilia or I or both, or what you'd like to see on this channel. Please leave them below. All right. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thanks, Becky.
Thank you, Cecilia.